Hello, folks, and welcome back to our Stockholm Regionals VGC 2025 coverage. We are into the top cut of this tournament, top 32, with Mikael Viljanen and Christoph Gooss. Again, hoping I'm pronouncing those names right, but we're going to go ahead and jump on into it here. Top 32 is pretty exciting. We are into those single elimination matches. Both of these players, not a ton of results here, so pretty successful here in Stockholm is always exciting to see. Now, we do have I got to see a little bit of a preview. We do have a Lunala team here from Mikael, which personally, I love Lunala. I think this type of team is awesome, and it is a power herb Lunala with that Terra Grass, Moonguy Speed, Meteor Beam, Expanding Force, and a Trick Room. The Indeedee down on the bottom left is pairing with it for that Psychic Surge, Psychic Seed, Follow Me, Helping Hand, Alluring Voice, and Trick Room with the Terra Fairy. Tornadus here as well for another form of speed with Bleak Wind Storm, Rain Dance, Tailwind, and Taunt, as well as the Covert Cloak with Terra Dark. Amoonguss as well with the Rocky Helmet. Again, you hate, if you're a Surging Strike, you hate to see it coming. Rage Powder, Spore, Pollen Puff, and Clear Smog. Clear Smog there most of the time for Dondozo type matchups. Urshifu is a Rapid Strike here with Terra Stellar and Focus Sash. Surging Strikes detect U-turn and close combat. No taunt to be seen, and no Aqua Jet notably, but when you're planning on having Psychic Terrain up, that makes sense. And then Ursaluna as your last piece of the Trick Room mode with Guts, Flame Orb, Terra Ghost, Facade, Headlong Rush, Substitute, and Protect here. So Ursaluna doing a lot of damage to itself. I don't know how many turns it's going to be able to stay up on the field, but a pretty hard Trick Room mode for Mikael there. But there's also the mode where you bring Tornadus and Urshifu, stay a little bit speedier, potentially bringing the Amoonguss along with that Lunala, or the Indeedee potentially along with that Lunala anyways, and not going for Trick Room. So multimodal for Mikael here. Again, those can be a little bit tricky to pilot, but obviously Mikael has had quite a bit of success with that, and a little bit difficult to play up against, although this is a little bit more of a hard drawn line. And we have a Miraidon team here from Christoph Gooss. Miraidon, again, pretty standard choice specs: Electro Diff, Draco Meteor, Dazzling Gleam, Volt Switch with that Terra Fairy. Grimmsnarl here to set up screens, make things a little bit more bulky. Foul Play, Reflect, Light Screen, Thunder Wave, got that likely to make the screens last longer, and Terra Ghost to not get hit by Fake Out. Volcarona is an awesome Pokemon here we've been seeing more of with that Citrus Berry, so this is definitely a bulkier one. Fire Dance, Giga Drain, Quiver Dance, and Protect. It can still do a lot of damage, and it is that Terra Grass to avoid anything from Amoonguss. Urshifu here is Rapid Strike, Mystic Water with Terra Poison, so a little bit more defensive. Surging Strike, Close Combat, Swords Dance, and Detect, so Swords Dance able to buff up even more. Urshifu wants to take some hits and then deal big damage. Iron Hands as well to take advantage of the electric terrain. Fake Out, Drain Punch, Wild Charge, Volt Switch with the Assault Vest, and Terra Water. And then Ditto to round things out with that Focus Sash. Christoph can use this Ditto to get a couple of really sweet Pokemon here. Ursaluna is a big one where you can get additional ground type coverage up against, well, I guess you don't really care too much about ground type coverage. I don't know what I'm talking about. I was thinking for some reason that Christoph had the or that Mikael had the electric type Pokemon, but Ursaluna doesn't feel too bad into the Miraidon and the Iron Hands, especially once you can go for Terra Ghost. But Ditto wouldn't mind copying the Lunala or the Amoonguss, really. Urshifu also can do a lot of damage, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't even see Ditto here, and we see actually Christoph start with the Grimmsnarl and the Volcarona, and Mikael lead the Lunala and the Indeedee. Now, in previous matchups, we have seen Lunala and Indeedee on the battlefield just absolutely solo opponents, but Grimmsnarl here really does not care about Expanding Force all that much, and honestly, this Volcarona doesn't mind dealing with it either. The main thing that Volcarona has to worry about is this Meteor Beam that is on the Lunala, so Volcarona can either switch, try to protect, get away from that a little bit. Grimmsnarl can also go for Thunder, or well, can't go for Thunder Wave here, can't go for the Prankster moves in that Psychic Terrain, but can go ahead and get stuff like Light Screen up. We do see the Terastallization coming out from Christoph, so telling me Volcarona is not going to be protecting here, is probably going to be going for something like a Quiver Dance. I wouldn't be too surprised. Fiery Dance maybe as well to boost that special attack stat, but the Light Screen comes through, and that Terra on the Volcarona means we are going to be seeing a pretty important move here, and it is just going to be that Quiver Dance. So Volcarona should be able to survive potential Meteor Beam if that is what Mikael is going for, but even so, an Expanding Force here might not be too bad if you're not too threatened by the Grimmsnarl. It is just going to be that Meteor Beam, so Lunala is going to get a special attack boost, likely going into the Volcarona here. Like I said, Rock would have been super effective and probably taking out this Volcarona even with this Citrus Berry, likely indicating that it's a little bit bulkier. So how much is this Lunala going to do with the Terastallization? Not very much. About a quarter of Volcarona's HP. And Trick Room comes out now from the Indeedee. So Volcarona going to be the slowest thing on the field now, especially after that Quiver Dance. Grimmsnarl can start to do some other stuff here if it so chooses, but Christoph might be in a spot where you want to switch out the Grimmsnarl. Volcarona is probably not in a terrible spot, likely could go for some damaging moves here. The Lunala being at +1 means Expanding Force could do quite a bit of work up against this Volcarona, and the Volcarona doesn't really want to have to take additional damage from the Indeedee, but I don't think Volcarona is going to be going away from the field anytime soon, so you can either go for some damage or maybe go for another Quiver Dance if it needs to get a little bit, a little bit more of a cannon on its attacks. But for Mikael here, again, Expanding Force doesn't feel too bad. Honestly, maybe you just start ignoring this Grimmsnarl, quite frankly. It does mean, like, if Christoph switches out the Grimmsnarl into an Expanding Force, that's going to feel really bad. And if the Grimmsnarl stays in, Foul Play does come out. That does quite a bit to the Lunala. That is interesting that Grimmsnarl is underspeeds that Lunala in Trick Room, but Moongeist Beam comes out now into the Volcarona, but Volcarona tanks that incredibly well, and the Citrus Berry even comes out as well. So Volcarona healing up really well from that, and Giga Drain is coming out. This Volcarona is going to be incredibly bulky, incredibly tanky, and Lunala down to just 23 HP, and we know now that this Grimmsnarl underspeeds it. Notably, Ursaluna does get that Flame Orb burn, so Guts is active. Grimmsnarl can still just go for Reflect here as well, and make sure that Ursaluna is not doing nearly as much damage. Volcarona may be under a little bit of pressure now, potentially with a Moongeist Beam, or honestly, I think Expanding Force would do more damage with this Psychic Terrain up, potentially, as well as Ursaluna potentially double targeting into it. Again, if you are Mikael, I don't know if you want to worry about this Grimmsnarl slot too much. We do see the Protect come out of the Volcarona, so Christoph getting a pretty good read on that, and the Reflect comes out from the Grimmsnarl. Honestly, if you're Christoph, ideally you want the Grimmsnarl to just get KO'd so you can bring something in super safe. But again, if you're Mikael, I don't know that you necessarily want to. You are obviously worried about the Foul Play, and honestly, Foul Play into the Ursaluna right now would really hurt. And already Mikael is on a pretty big clock from this Ursaluna. Headlong Rush as an attack is already going to be causing you quite a bit of problems in terms of the damage that you'll take back. So Facade is honestly the best choice from this Ursaluna, I feel like. But Christoph still has to make his way, or Mikael, my apologies, still has to make his way through this Volcarona, which right now is not looking like it's going down anytime soon, especially with this combination of Reflect and Light Screen up. Trick Room, I believe, is only going to be up for 1, maybe 2 more turns, but at the very least, even if it's up for 2 more turns, Volcarona will be able to protect through it. And now Volcarona can get an attack off here. A Giga Drain into the Ursaluna would be incredibly devastating. You certainly do not want to have to take that as Mikael, and this Lunala is just waiting to go down. Again, at any point, Grimmsnarl can go for Foul Play here, and Christoph actually switches out the Volcarona, reading that potentially there is still some threat to it, or just wanting to get something else, brings the Ditto in, and so is going to have a Lunala of his own. That is very big here, especially if we see a Facade going into that slot, and so that Ditto turn Lunala is unaffected by it here. Foul Play comes out from the Grimmsnarl as well. Very smart from Christoph Gooss, that guarantees that Lunala is not going to be able to get an attack off. Either there's going to have to be a Foul Play or a switch or a Protect or something out of that slot. And so Grimmsnarl attacking into that guarantees that this new Lunala on Christoph's side gets to keep its Shadow Shield as well. So a little bit of a dyssynergy here with the Ditto having a Focus Sash is Lunala has Shadow Shield, so it won't be taking, it likely would not be going down to the Focus Sash, but can't have everything perfect. But Amoonguss makes its way onto the field now. I believe there is 1 more turn of Trick Room. Yes, 1 turn of Trick Room remains. So Amoonguss likely the fastest thing on the field now. If you are Christoph, Expanding Force feels pretty good here, potentially. But at the same time, this new Lunala getting slept does not feel great. You could certainly go for Foul Play with this Grimmsnarl into the opposing Ursaluna, but Christoph just wants to go for the switch here. Notably switching in to, it is going to be the Miraidon coming in. So another big Pokemon in the back. This is going to guarantee that Spore can't do anything here with that Electric Terrain getting set. I was going to say potentially Volcarona coming in since it is a Grass type with that Terra, but not the case. We do see a Headlong Rush come in to this Ditto after that Shadow Shield gets broken, but this Ditto Lunala takes it incredibly well. Expanding Force is going to come out now. It's going to be super effective into this Amoonguss and takes it down. With that Electric Terrain up, it isn't a double target. It does not target 2 Pokemon, but indeed he's going to be coming back out onto the field. It will overwrite the Electric Terrain, but if you were Christoph, you can simply switch out, bring the Miraidon back in later in the game. Not necessarily that you even want to, now that you can just be clicking Expanding Force, quite frankly. And so, with this Indeedee on the field, expanding force, Mikael is forced to give Christoph an even stronger expanding force than what he had previously. This Indeedee is also under a ton of pressure with Miraidon potentially being able to do whatever it wants here, quite frankly. Dazzling Gleam doesn't feel too bad. Obviously, the Miraidon cannot Terra away from a Headlong Rush super effective attack, but I don't even know if you have to worry about that if you were Christoph. The main thing would be is if a Draco Meteor misses. But at the end of the day, with both the Grimmsnarl and the Volcarona in the back, yeah, Ursaluna is forced to protect here, and Mikael has to try to get Trick Room set up. That's the only potential win condition, but that means this Indeedee has to survive, and with an Electro Drift coming through, Indeedee is relatively bulky, but it doesn't have the Psychic Seed anymore. It does survive on 27 HP, but yeah, we do see the expanding force one way or the other. The Ursaluna gets to protect through it, but this Indeedee is going down, and that is going to leave Mikael's Ursaluna out of Trick Room in a 4v1. With this burn up, it would only be a matter of time anyways before Mikael succumbed to it. And now, with the ability to attack into both, notably, Miraidon, it cannot do any damage to Ursaluna this turn, but the Lunala can, and so seeing the writing on the wall, Mikael Viljanen concedes game number 1, and Christoph Gooss taking it home pretty convincingly there, getting that double restricted at the end, getting a little bit of a preview of Regulation I. That feels really good if you were Christoph. Quite frankly, in my own matches where I have played against Volcaronas, that thing is hard to deal with. It can tank hits way better than you might think, especially with that Grimmsnarl pairing, and it can just become a bit of a raid boss. And that is what Mikael was kind of discovering there, is that especially with that terrestrialization, Meteor Beam just wasn't cutting it. And so it's going to be hard to adapt into beating Volcarona. I don't really know what Mikael has to try to deal with it super well. But finding an answer there is going to be the number one thing. Maybe dealing with the Grimmsnarl might be the more important thing, but that's a lot easier said than done. So going into this game number 2, I'm very interested to see what adaptations Mikael makes, and I'm also interested to see if Christoph is going for that same Volcarona game plan. So let's go ahead and get into it here. It is once again the same game plan. It worked so well before. Grimmsnarl and Volcarona on the field, and Mikael going for the same lead as well. Indeed, he sets that Psychic Terrain here, so no targeted prankster moves coming through. No Thunder Wave for that Grimmsnarl. But again, right now, if you are Christoph, the same play as previously where you go Light Screen plus Quiver Dance feels pretty darn good. If you are Mikael, I think there is a decent shot that on the turn where he went for Moongeist Beam instead of Expanding Force, I think Expanding Force mathematically might do a little bit more there, and you also potentially can get that Grimmsnarl if it's switching out into a good spot. We do see Mikael going for an early game adaptation though, swapping out the Indeedee and bringing in the Ursaluna right off rip. Are we going to see terrestrialization from Christoph? I believe this is Mikael here going for... No, okay, that's Christoph. Those hats, I got to figure out those colors there. Christoph going for that terrestrialization. So once again, Volcarona with that Terra Grass. And if you are Mikael, if you're anticipating that same Light Screen Quiver Dance combo, that could be pretty big. We do see the terrestrialization coming out of Mikael here. That is going to be the Lunala going into that Terra Grass. So gonna feel relatively good about this, I guess. I think the main thing here for Mikael is going for the Terra Grass to avoid a potential foul play coming in if Christoph is reading this play here. But we do just see the Light Screen, and again, I imagine we're going to see the Quiver Dance here. A Fiery Dance, though, from Volcarona would be a heck of a read. It is just going to be that Quiver Dance, and Lunala, I believe, we saw it already, is going to be setting up that Trick Room here, and this puts Mikael in a bit of a better spot if that is the case. It is indeed that Trick Room, so now Mikael is much earlier in the game, with Ursaluna already burned, and Lunala gets to go for a pretty strong attack here. Honestly, Meteor Beam into the Grimmsnarl might be the way to go, but notably, Grimmsnarl does get to attack before the Lunala. I don't know exactly where the Ursaluna is on these speed tiers. I know we saw it, but I've definitely forgotten it. But I'm interested to see what this Ursaluna can do. If you are Mikael here, maybe you want to try to go ahead and get this Grimmsnarl out of the way. Although again, that especially with both Reflect and Light Screen up, that just gives Christoph even more of an opportunity to bring stuff in safely. Grimmsnarl does go down incredibly low, which is pretty big, but it doesn't go down. Meteor Beam now coming out from the Lunala. Special attack is going to increase. Who is this targeting here is the big question, and it is going into that Grimmsnarl. That is pretty big. It means Volcarona gets another turn to do whatever it wants here. And again, Fiery Dance into the Lunala now looks really, really tempting. So what are we going to see? It is just going to be that Giga Drain, though. Again, that's probably going into the Ursaluna. Does so much damage. It's super effective. On top of that, Quiver Dance, Ursaluna is going to be able to get one, or I guess 2 more attacks off. That took 14 points of damage from that burn. Christoph, going to have to bring in Pokemon number 3 here, but that Ursaluna is incredibly low, and I believe this Volcarona should win a potential 1v1 later in the game versus the Lunala. So if you are Christoph, you have the opportunity with some Miraidon in the back here, but it is going to be the Ditto coming out now and copying down that Ursaluna this time. For Christoph, you kind of have 2 good options here, quite frankly. Notably, the Ursaluna is not for Christoph, is not going to have guts to be, is not going to be able to trigger guts. So it's not going to be nearly as strong as Mikael's Ursaluna. I'm interested to see what the speed is for Christoph here. I'd imagine that the Ditto is trained at least decently speedy, so it is likely the case that Mikael's Ursaluna is going to be moving first. I don't know how relevant that is going to be, but the big thing that this Ursaluna has, it does have Protect, but the big thing this Ursaluna has that is immune to Moongeist Beam, which is pretty big. Just a double Protect out of both Pokemon here for Christoph, potentially trying to stall out the Trick Room, which could be pretty big if Miraidon is what's in the back. And again, that's what we saw last time, and there is no reason to believe that Christoph has brought anything different. So Expanding Force coming out, it is going to hit both, or it's going to hit both Protects here, and Mikael going to have to tank even more burn damage on this Ursaluna. It's going to guarantee on the next turn that Ursaluna goes down to that burn. Just 5 HP remains. That is not something that you want to see. Expanding Force for Mikael, still a decent option relatively, but again, Fiery Dance plus a potential Headlong Rush feels really, really bad, and that might mean Christoph gets to take 2 KOs, but instead just switches out the Ditto. We could see the Miraidon come in now, and that is what is going to happen. So this does make sure that Expanding Force only hits one target here. It does potentially open up the Miraidon to taking a Headlong Rush, but it is just going to be the Facade going into the Volcarona, which takes it down incredibly low here. But with that Citrus Berry, I think that would take it out of range of that single target Expanding Force. It's going to be very, very close here. Expanding Force coming through. It is just going to be single target, not quite as strong, and Volcarona just barely survives. Fiery Dance comes through. That is a massive turn with that Volcarona surviving. Lunala is taken down to just above half HP, but Volcarona gets even stronger with that Fiery Dance, and Ursaluna now tanking that last tick of, what am I trying to say? Whatever, that last tick of burn, and going down. So much now is going to be on this Lunala's shoulders. It has to try to take out this Miraidon. It's going to have to take out a Ditto that is potentially going to be able to come in and copy that that Lunala again. And Volcarona here still going to be able to do a lot of damage. You have Trick Room up for one more turn. Volcarona is going to be able to protect at least through this. Miraidon is currently the thing that you're going to have to target if you are Mikael, but at the same time, if you don't target this Volcarona, it's going to be a pretty big problem. Notably, Expanding Force can hit both, but if Ditto comes in, that is just going to copy this Indeedee, and I imagine that that is going to take an Expanding Force pretty darn well. And then you potentially have to deal with Helping Hand on this Miraidon as well. Indeedee does get to go for Helping Hand of its own. Maybe that is enough to take out this opposing Indeedee, or at least take it down to 1 HP, but Volcarona is just going to go for that Protect. Quite frankly, there's no reason not to if you are Christoph, unless you really wanted to play risky. But Mikael goes for that Expanding Force. I'm interested to see how much damage this does to the Ditto Indeedee here. At the most, it's going to take it down to Focus Sash, but just a little bit over half, and Trick Room finally fades. Mikael does have an opportunity to get Trick Room up one more time, but at that point, I think you would potentially have to sacrifice this Lunala. Maybe not necessarily. You could go either switch out the Lunala, maybe go for Protect. Indeedee tried to go for Trigger, or actually, never mind. This Lunala doesn't have Protect. I don't know what I'm talking about. Potentially try to switch out this Lunala, or go for Follow Me on the Indeedee, and then go for Trick Room on the Lunala. I think Mikael's Indeedee can probably tank a Giga Drain or a Fiery Dance, although that's going to be really, really tough ask. Both Indeedees, though, go for the Follow Me. Are we going to be seeing damaging moves from both of these Pokemon, or is Mikael focused on getting Trick Room back up? This Volcarona gets to go for another Fiery Dance, raise its special attack even more. Lunala goes for Expanding Force, and Ditto goes down to a single bit of HP. There's no Trick Room getting set up here, and Volcarona finally falls. Mikael once again gets a Pokemon advantage, but this Lunala is still not in the best of spots. It's going to be Ditto and Miraidon on the field to wrap this up. So Christoph has one turn of guaranteed electric terrain here. What can he do with it? Notably, I don't think that you can go for electric moves here if you are this Miraidon, because there is no longer an Ursaluna that you have to worry about. I don't believe that Mikael had anything that would really cause too many problems there, but that said, Lunala currently does resist electric type moves. Miraidon could go for Dazzling Gleam, but then you have Amoonguss in the back that is potentially not going to be too perturbed by it. And there is a world where Mikael can swap out the Indeedee, bring it back in, and then Indeedee and Amoonguss potentially could be what wrap up this game here if you can get this Miraidon to go to sleep. It's entirely going to depend on what move Christoph selects here. It is going to be that helping hand starting from the Indeedee, so no follow me. It is the follow me out of Mikael's here. Are we going to see a double? Are we going to see a spread move or a single move? It is going to be that spread move, Dazzling Gleam coming through. I think that is probably the safest bet from Christoph. And with that Indeedee not switching out previously for Mikael, I think that that is just about going to eliminate any possible chance that Mikael has of winning this. Even though this Indeedee goes down, Electric Terrain is still up. This Miraidon cannot go to sleep from the Amoonguss. It is going to be spread damage. The Lunala is going to have to tank this damage or take this damage no matter what. And now Amoonguss is going to have to try to Pollen Puff its way to victory. It doesn't have Protect. It can't really try to wait out this Electric Terrain. It does resist these Dazzling Gleams, but I don't think it can out damage this Miraidon even with the Pollen Puff. What it would have to try to do is hope that it can maybe survive long enough for this Electric Terrain to fade, put it to sleep, and then go from there. Alternatively, Dazzling Gleam is going to get a little bit stronger here. You could get to a point where Miraidon is going to have to start clicking Struggle, but I just don't think Amoonguss has enough HP for that, and I think that without Protect, that is going to hurt even more. And right now in this race, with the light screen wearing off, I do not believe that Amoonguss wins this Pollen Puff versus Dazzling Gleam race. Yeah, that does even more damage there. Pollen Puff gets to come through again. It's going to do a decent chunk more, but not nearly enough. And now, again, if Electric Terrain was not up, if Mikael had been able to find out some way, somehow, to swap out that Indeedee, if that was potentially an option, figuring out just sacrificing the Lunala, bringing the Amoonguss in, I don't think Christoph's Indeedee does much of anything, and now it is just a matter of time. Does Dazzling Gleam KO this Amoonguss before Electric Terrain goes down? Yes, it does. Amoonguss is going to fall on the next one, even if Electric Terrain fades this turn, which I think it does. It might even be next turn. Yeah, Electric Terrain fades this turn. All Mikael needed was one more turn of this Amoonguss surviving for Spore to come through, but Dazzling Gleam comes through, and Christoph Gooss, in a game 2 that came down to the wire, moves on to your top 16. So I think there, if you are Mikael, it's a little bit tough, but I think you have to try to reset that terrain. I think that is the only way that you can win, is resetting the terrain and Amoonguss putting that Miraidon to sleep. I don't know. It's probably a lot easier said than done, but congratulations to Christoph Gooss. They're taking it home in 2 games. Top 16 rounds are coming up next. We have a few top 8s, a couple top 4s, and finals to come out soon. So subscribe. Keep your eye out for it. Until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.